The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the country. It's Mark from SolidCAM. We'll be doing our SolidCAM Live half-hour free training session today. I don't have an intro for him because he doesn't need one. It's Kevin Rankel.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, so I thought we would cover this part a little further, continuing what we talked about yesterday with process templates and just general templates, because I actually got an email as a follow-up from our friend Stellian on what he'd like to see on this part. So I'm going to show what we could do with a process template. So just to review, what a process template is, or just a template in general, is it is pretty much anything you enter in this window, anything other than the geometry. So if this was a regular toolpath, you would have the ability to add some sort of geometry, and then you would tell it which tool you'd like to use, including fees and speeds, coolant, what levels you want to refer to. Pretty much anything in here that doesn't tie into geometry can be selected, can be saved under a template. And there are two types of templates you can create inside SolidCAM. If we just right-click here, you can create a single template. So when it just says template, it's referring to just that single operation. Saves the operation, details the parameters, saves the tool, and then when you go to add operation from template, you're adding just that one operation. You're just telling it that you'd like to bring in whatever you saved under the template, and then you reselect the new geometry. With a process template, it is a collection of toolpaths. So it's the same thing, but for many toolpaths. It adds all those tools. So let's say, for instance, if I open this up and take a look at one of these toolpaths that we did before, these templates, there are 4 operations there. There are 4 sets of tools in there. So if I were to load this template, all 4 tools would be added to my tool table, or all 4 toolpaths will be added to my toolpath list, and then each one would require me to choose the new geometry. Or if they share geometry, then I could choose one set of geometry and assign it to all 3. Basically, when I do that, it's going to ask me for what geometry is, what levels are. We're going to go through that today in a more practical example. But basically, template versus process template is either a single operation or a group of operations. So let's take a look at what I did here. I have a 2D eye machining for the inside pockets using a 1-inch tool, I believe, and then a half-inch tool doing a rest operation. Now, in modern SolidCAM, it's basically just it's one toolpath with the multi-tool option engaged. If we take a look at that real quick here, I have the 2 tools here. So there are 2 toolpaths in the list, but it's one toolpath with the 2 tools selected. So in this case, I would be able to just save one template, and it would save all those tools. And then the next is a face mill. Now, I'm doing this face mill as the last toolpath only because if I'm going to eye machine all of that, there's really no need to face all of this. It'd be a waste of time. So what I did with this toolpath is in the geometry section, like you saw a second ago, I'm using this icon here. And in newer versions of SolidCAM, this is your stock recognition, stock-based geometry selection. This is unique, not unique, but this is actually important and interesting for a toolpath, and specifically for the template of the toolpath, because I am not telling it to select a specific geometry, but I am telling it to look at my stock definition, so that you can think of that as a variable. Once I create this template and I load this template going forward, it will always look at my stock and target and figure out the geometry for me. So in terms of templates, in terms of reusability, this is key. This is really good, because any of these recognition toolpaths can now be used in a template to add even more of a time saving in terms of programming. I can just load this template and just synchronize and calculate. I don't even have to choose geometry anymore, because this is automatically going to look at the geometry for me. So I included it on this one. I actually could have done one 3D eye machining and then get it to recognize the geometry for me. But I wanted to bring this in as a standard toolpath so I can select the geometries to show you how process template works. But now I have 3 toolpaths. I have 3 tools, or in this case, actually 2 tools, because I'm reusing that first one. But what I'll do is I'm going to highlight all 3, right-click, create template. So again, it says create template, but the fact that I have 3 toolpaths selected means that this will become a process template. So let's give this one, or a process template, depending on which side of the border you're on.
The US.
Right. Okay. Well, let's call this one SolidCAM Live, and I usually like to put today's date. So that is now a process template. Let's say we get rid of these now. So I'm going to get rid of all three operations. I'll get rid of all my tools. So everybody's gone. Let's even clean up everything. We'll do a CAM part cleanup. Let's imagine that I just started fresh. I added my stock definition, my target definition, my coordinate system. I'm at the beginning of my part, and let's say it's a different part completely. Now I know I have some templates that have retained my programming intent. I can now just load those templates to get my work done even quicker than if I had to go and choose everything. So right click, add operations from process template. See, now you got me all like thinking about the way I'm pronouncing my words. I'm going to continue with my way of doing it. So SolidCAM Live 5/2020, today's date. So this is the one that we just created. You can see there's my three toolpaths there. If I had labeled them, because remember, every time you create a toolpath, you can actually give it a name as well. So I would actually have given them names so that when I'm looking at this, I know what each one is supposed to do. So in this case, I probably would have said maybe roughing main pockets, rest milling main pocket, and then facing top or something like that. But with templates, because they're supposed to be variable and they're never really tied into a specific geometry, it's a good idea to give them names here. That way, when you go to load the template, you know what the intention of that template is for. But what I can do now is I'll even check this box here so that I know that this little prefix will be added to each toolpath, so I know it came from the template. I'll click OK. And the first window that pops up is asking for the common data between all those toolpaths. Now in this case, there really is no common data. I have a face mill and I have two 2D eye machinings. Maybe two of them share geometry, but the third does not. Maybe two of them share a upper level. The third one does not. So I'm not going to choose any common data here, but I could if there was something common about them. If I wanted the 2D eye machining to start at the upper level, I could do that. If I wanted the face mill to start at the upper level, I can do that. This is kind of an old way of doing things because some of those old toolpaths you had to choose an upper level, lower level. But remember, there's a lot of new associativity in some of our toolpaths. Specifically, that face mill I created, I actually set it to start at top of stock and end at top of target. So again, when I load that template with that associativity in there, I don't have to choose anything. That face mill will automatically be able to be generated. The only thing you have to choose is the coordinate system. All the toolpaths under that one process template have to be under the same MAC position. So I'll click OK. And you can see that the three toolpaths were added. The only one that's ready to go is the face mill. But the other two, they have that red color indicating that they need some new information. Usually the little black asterisk, little black star here indicates it just needs to be synchronized and calculate. And that applies here because remember, I put a lot of associativity into that face mill. I can literally just go synchronize and calculate. Although this is a stock recognition toolpath, so I need to calculate these first two guys. But this guy was ready to go. There's nothing I need to apply to it other than just update the previous toolpath to update the stock. But this red color indicates that there's no geometry. You can see there it says no geometry. So these guys need to have some geometry. So I'm going to open this up. And by double clicking on it, I'm basically opening up the toolpath and everything is there. My tool, my levels. In this case, it's reading from the upper level of the part, but the pocket depth, it doesn't know what to read. I need to tell it what to do. So technology wizard, level 8 turbo, technology, all of that's there. It's just the geometry needs to be selected. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to go new. And using my stock recognition through pocket, I'm just going to grab this guy here, constant Z. And let's get some of these guys in here as well. So all I'm doing is I'm just selecting the geometry for this particular toolpath. Okay, now also, this is the multi-tool. So that's actually going to be the geometry for both sets of tools. My lower level, in this case, just highlight that, select the bottom of the part, synchronize and calculate. Now I hate synchronize and calculate. That's going to calculate those two toolpaths I really probably should have clicked on synchronize and calculate related operations, because this third toolpath, the face mill, is actually related. It's waiting for that stock update. So it actually should have been clicked on as well. And in one click, I would have calculated all 3 toolpaths. Okay, so let me exit out of here and just show you now that this guy can be synchronized and calculated because that stock has been updated. So any questions on process template or what I've done here, or anything specific to this topic in general?
And we do have one that did come up from, excuse me, Edwin. He's got 2 different parts with mostly similar shapes. And he's asking if he can bring that all over with a process template, or is there other ways of going about this?
So I'm just reading it now myself here. Yes, so the templates need to be under, all the toolpaths under one process template have to be under the same Mac. So if you have two separate CAM part files that you'd like to apply the same toolpaths to, but those groups of toolpaths are under different Mac positions, Mac numbers, then I would suggest still using process templates, but creating a process template for each Mac. So on part 1, file 1, if you have Mac 1 and Mac 2, you'll need a process template for all the operations under Mac 1 and all the toolpaths under Mac 2. That way, when you go to part 2, file 2, so a separate CAM part file, a different geometry completely, but you'd like to apply the same toolpath methodology, then you can load the template for Mac 1, the template for Mac 2, and as long as those apply to your Mac 1, Mac 2 in your second part, you've retained all that intent. You've brought in your tools, you've brought in your tool paths, synchronize and calculate, or select geometries. So you can grab that information and bring it over. That's usually what we would suggest if you're doing, let's say, a family of parts, and there's a part file that is completely different. There's no associativity you can retain. It's really just you're trying to save those tool paths. You can bring your process templates over and just bring all that intent with you. The only thing you can't do is cross Mac positions.
And in that particular case, I think kind of like Edwin was also saying that if he, zipped up everything, and not so much zipped up everything, but did a save as, so that way you have a copy of that, and then come in there and change out your model reference would be another way.
Correct. Yes. So there is actually a video on our YouTube channel called the save as / change model reference method, and that's another way to do this. Rather than creating process templates and just importing all that into a new file, you could literally do a save as. So save this file under a completely different name. So it brings over the tool table, the tool list, the tool path list. So all the tool paths under all the different Macs that you've created. And then when you go and right click again in the new file and say change model reference, what you're literally doing is changing what the target model or the design model is. You're actually overwriting it with the new solid. So that's another way to bring all that design intent, that programming intent with you, where you don't even have to create process templates. That is another way to do it when you've got a very extreme example, I guess. The process template is just to save the tool path and the tool tables. But with the change model reference, you can retain everything. Let's say you've got some fixturing in there that you want to keep. You don't have to import again. The only thing with the change model reference is that it's completely new geometry, so you'll have to reassign levels and all that. But you probably would have to do that with a process template anyway. So the two methods are very similar. It's just that with the change model reference, sometimes if it is changing to a new design model, but it is basically the same model with some changes to it, there might be some associativity that you can retain. Because we've mentioned this before, but each face, each edge has a SolidWorks ID number. So with the change model reference method, sometimes you can retain that associativity because it's looking for that same ID number. But between the two, it's a matter of what you want to do. If you've got a part file where you've got multiple operations across multiple Mac positions, sometimes the change model reference is a better option. So I would agree with Edwin on that one. or if he wasn't stating fact, but he's asking a question, that would be the one I would suggest to Edwin if he's got a part with multiple toolpaths and multiple Macs.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Another thing that was asked about in this part is basically, rather than doing a face mill operation like you see here, where it's doing a contour style, but it's still doing this kind of offset kind of thing, what if you had a tool that was large enough to just go right around? If this was a smaller part and we had a large diameter tool that covered this whole thing, we would call this one pass in face mill. But how do you do a one pass on something that's this thin, that follows that contour? To do that, it's very similar to what Kevin did on, I believe it was Friday last week, because I saw the video this time, where he took a tool and he used the profile toolpath to offset it and find the center line and just go across. So let's do that real quick. Just in case, I want to see if I have a tool in here that's wide enough. That 1 inch is probably wide enough there. And if you guys weren't aware, this is basically this icon up here allows me to add a 3-dimensional version of the tool to my mouse, so I can do things like check for clearances, see if that cutting length is enough, and in the case of what I'm looking for here, is the diameter wide enough? So I could probably take the center of that tool and follow that line there with tool 57. So let's do that real quick. So I'm going to add a profile operation. And in terms of my chain, I'm going to grab, I think maybe the outside edge of this edge here to find the center line there. And then to do those guys, I'll choose a separate chain as well. So I'm going to do this in kind of a couple of multiple steps here. I'm going to choose the first edge here. Then I'm going to turn on up to entity and then click on constant Z, because what I want to do is I want to show you how you can choose one edge and then on that same Z plane, wait for it to here, let me do it on the inside because it'll be a little more apparent. So up to entity, constant Z, both being turned on, basically tell SolidCAM to wait for me to decide when the end of the chain is. Because if I don't have this turned on, what happens is as soon as I choose an edge, it'll find everything connected to this edge in the same Z plane. That's why sometimes you want to have that defaulted to on, because once I click on something, it chooses that entire chain for me. And sometimes that's what you're looking for. But in the case of this internal chain here, I'm not actually looking to get this entire thing. I'm only looking to get maybe just this edge here. So in order to do that, I want to turn on up to entity, grab just this edge here, and you can see it's waiting for me to choose the last edge in this chain. That'll be this guy here. But it goes all the way around on that same Z plane and finds it for me. So I'm still using constant Z to my advantage, but it's not going crazy and finding everything on that same Z plane. See if that makes sense. Another little trick, this is something I learned from the SolidCAM professor in one of his videos on our YouTube channel. If you hold the control key, I don't have to close the chain. I can start a new chain. So I didn't have to tell it that chain 2 is done. I'm moving on to another one. It just automatically started the new chain. I have these guys already turned on. I can just come over here and click on that one. In this case, though, I will click the green check mark because I don't have any other chain to click on. So I have 3 chains, the outside edge and these other edges here. And I've intentionally chosen them in a clockwise direction because when I go to do the offsets, when I go to do anything inside the profile toolpath, I want to make sure that I tell the tool to stay on the right side or left side of that chain. And that means all the chains should technically be in the same direction so that when I say left side or right side, I'm calling it out for all 3 chains. So green check mark. Let's go to our tool and I'll select my tool. Tool 57, it's a 1-inch tool. Levels. Let's play it safe. We'll go top of stock to top of target. Now, it's reading it automatically for me, but I'm also doing this just in case I want to make a template. So next time I go to use this toolpath, it will automatically read the top of stock, top of target. It's just safe that way to make sure I don't crash into the stock that I haven't face milled yet, or just for safety's sake, for whatever reason. Any level of associativity you can add, you're better off. But here is where we can mainly do what we're looking for here, that center line finishing of that entire thing. So like I said, I'm going to make sure that this is tool side center. So the center of the tool will follow that edge right now, but that's not the edge I want to follow. I want to go in the center of that wall. I'm going to go to this geometry button in the technology section, and I'm going to get it to go halfway. So I'm assuming that these are all the same thickness of wall. I'm pretty sure they are, but I could always have checked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for chain 1 to start, I'm going to take an offset that is halfway between the next thing I click on, which is this chain right here. And you can see that it offsets that chain to the halfway point between those two edges there. And now I'll click on Apply All, and it offsets all the chains. So I'll click on the green check mark. Lead in, lead out. Well, I'm starting from the center line. I'll just turn all this off. Save and calculate. You can see that we have a tool path that is going down the center, and it actually is finishing all of that. Let's get out of here. I'm going to turn off this face mill, and then we can do a solid verify on that to confirm.
Yeah, and basically what Mark is showing us is, for those of you guys who were with us on last Friday, we had someone trying to explain it. So this is his part showing an exact explanation of what's going on.
It's funny how I'm trying to slow this down and it's really going fast. Let's do this step by step here. So like that, like that. So obviously with the tool going down the center line, there really isn't a left or right side, but by having all the chains going in the same clockwise direction, when I give it an offset, they're all offset in the same direction. So that idea is still there.
Mark, how would we extend those windows on the front and back side to get that so the tool doesn't start right on the part?
Yeah, I saw that as well. So that's a really good question. So what you would do is you would go back into the toolpath in that same section. So technology, geometry. Let's say for chain 2, I don't want to start right there. I want to start off the part. I'll click on chain 2, and then under the extension section, I'll say start. At first, I'm going to just eyeball it. I'm going to say start this far out. So I click on a piece of geometry. It could be an edge, it could be a face, and now I've extended that chain that far out. If I want to go even further, well, now I know from that number there, I need to be a little more than 500 thou. I'll say let's start maybe 750. So that is now, that should be 750. I'm not sure if this is metric or imperial. Let's see, or what do you guys call it? Inch? Okay, so looks like this is probably inch. So let's just say 1 inch away from the part, or 1 inch away extension. So there we go. And I can do that on the back side as well. So 1 inch. So now those are both extended. And if I wanted to, I could do apply to all, or I'm just going to say, we'll just do the same for these two, because these are the only ones I need to start off like that. This one, it's starting right on the corner there, but it's going to overlap with itself, so I'm not too concerned. But if I wanted to, I could do the same. Actually, it doesn't. Okay, so we're a closed chain. I think it's because I have...
You'd have to do that one as a lead in, because it's completely closed off.
Well, basically that's what that window does. If it's closed off, then you don't have this, but you do have the ability to change the start position. So if I wanted to not start right on that corner, let's say I want to start somewhere over here, I can highlight this, move it over there. To eliminate the witness line, I can go to extension / overlap. And I don't have a lead in, laid out, but it should show a little bit of an overlap there. Okay. And it looks like there is a question. So if I have a profile operation with a chain offset and I make a template, will it remember the chain offset? If not, is there any way to make it remember? Anything related to geometry, it doesn't retain, as far as I know. Is that, what do you think, Kevin? Is that a correct statement?
I guess I've never done it. So like I said, let's try it and see.
I seem to remember that anything related to the geometry specific cannot be retained. So anything after this click of this button here, this stuff doesn't get saved because you're basically trying to tell it to extend on geometry that it is not aware of. But yeah, like Kevin said, let's try it out. So let's do a save. We'll save this as just a single template. Try this out. Click OK. And let's add a new template. So add operation from template. I'm looking for try this out. Click OK. And you can see here that it's asking for the common data. I'm guessing this is new for 2020 because there really is no need to do common data because I'm trying to load a template. But let's try some new geometry. So define.
And if you want, you could probably just reuse that existing geometry too.
Yeah, I could. Why not? Let's just do that. So
that way
here
you
it is.
See both different ways.
And this was contour 1. So let's go contour 1. And we'll leave it as is, because in that same template, I set it to top of stock, top of targets. I don't even have to touch it. And if we go to geometry, it did not save that stuff. So anything related to the geometry itself cannot be retained by a template. What you do is you save everything else. So in here, it saved that I want to do center line. It saved that we are not putting a lead in, lead out. My levels are top of stock, top of target. The tool was selected. The only thing that was not saved is the geometry, although we loaded it up front, and the modification to the geometry was not saved. Hopefully that answers the question. Now, that being said, you can also put, I think it's in here, a little bit of a message to yourself. I can't remember if this gets output in the G code or not. I think it does. Is that?
Nope. It won't.
Okay.
Be,
so here you can put a little message.
You guys can have it. Sorry.
There's a lot of stuff that can be added to the post that can be put into the G code. So if you wanted a message to be put out, you can actually put something here that says, I think it's like a string or something. Here's stop message if you put an optional stop, but you can also put something in there else in there. But as a message to yourself as to what to do with this toolpath, you can put in, hey, remember to add, an extension or whatever it is. But a lot of the times, this section here, technology, geometry, it's a modification to the specific geometry, the specific case of whatever you're doing here. Because always remember, there really is no need to add sketches inside SolidCAM, even though you have a great ability to do so because of our integration with SolidWorks. Sometimes there are modifications like you see here to modify the current geometry to get what you're looking for. And in that case, that's why you're not really going to be saving it, because it's a modification for the particular case that you're in. So it doesn't save it. So pretty much takeaway is anything related to geometry is not saved by a template. Everything else is. Okay, so let's get out of here. Any other questions before we, looks like we're at the end of the day. So let's see, okay. Yes, so there are many improvements from the 2018 version. I'm just commenting on a comment from our friend Stellian. This is Stellian's part, and yes, so this is appreciate the comment of good job. But there are many new improvements in the 2020 version from any previous version. So if you are not on 2020, it is a confirmed version. I would say update if you can. And if you have a login for the website, that's the best way to get it. Just go to the website, solidcam.com, and get the link. If not, give us a call on the main tech support line, and we can help you with your installation, with any licensing issues you have. Anytime you have a question, I think I mentioned this yesterday, but anytime you have a question at all, even if it's a very quick question, it's our job to help you out. So give us a call, and we can answer those questions as best we can. Okay, and Brad is just saying that in his post it outputs the message comments in the code. So you probably have a post that specifically is doing that. But there is another way to do that if you don't have a post that has that modification to it. And Kevin also covered this very recently, and that is the insert file. So in the previous SolidCAM live, I think it was the one on Monday, Kevin showed you how you could do insert file. All that really does is just browse to a text file or an NC file or any other G-code file on your hard drive or on your network, and it inserts it here. So when you go to post the code, it inserts that bit of code as well. So any kind of file you have in there, that could be messages, that could be a set of code that you've manually typed in and saved so that you don't really have a way to recreate it inside SolidCAM, but it's a bit of code you always want to add. You have that ability to do that with insert file. That's kind of the old way to do it. The newer way is also to do with add machine control operation. With machine control operation, you go to your miscellaneous, and you also have the ability to add a message here as well. With MCOs, machine control operations, you can do a lot of crazy stuff. And this itself would be its own training class. This itself could be maybe even a SolidCAM Live for really basic stuff. But this is something that's actually been around for a while. But I consider this to be somewhat new because we're looking at this a little bit more for some certain functionalities inside SolidCAM than some of the other stuff that we do. But this can be very versatile depending on what it is you're trying to get your machine to do. So one little note on that, that insert file. Okay, so if there are any other questions, Kevin's going to put my email in the chat section. You can always email me directly, or you can email Kevin with your questions, your suggested topics for SolidCAM Live. If you're looking for personalized training, that's always available. Contact your local salesperson, and they can give you a quote if you don't already have hours, or if you do have hours, email me directly, and we can put you on the calendar. You can get training time live in a GoToMeeting over the phone with anyone on our training team. And basically, it is on your parts, it is on your specific topics, your specific geometries, anything you need help with, either on SolidWorks or SolidCAM. Because remember, we also need to know SolidWorks. Not to say that we're going to go fully in depth inside SolidWorks, but if you know how to use your SolidWorks, it helps you on the SolidCAM side. That's to our benefit anyway. And like Kevin mentioned in one of the videos, I noticed that he actually had the little graphic that shows you that you get a certain percentage when you get that sale. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is it 20%?
Yep, 20%.
That's if it goes to sale. If it just goes to a demo, if your contact, your friend even just sits through a demo, then you get that gift card.
Yep, $100.
So, $100. So $100 for just giving us a name.
Yep.
It's a little more than that, but it's basically it's just a contact. They get into a demo, and then as a finder's fee, you get that $100 gift card. So if you're interested in that, contact your local salesperson with some contacts that you think would benefit from SolidCAM, InventorCAM, or anything else that we provide, and get that $100. Pretty simple. So for today, use my email if you have any questions. We will talk tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Stay safe, keep your family safe, keep busy. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Have a good one, guys.